Welcome to the Cross in the Desert. My name is Randy Noble, and I'm so very glad that you've taken the time to watch this very special broadcast. On Friday, June 14th, 2013, Iranians went to the polls for the first time in 4 years after the bloody last election and cast their vote for a successor to Ahmadinejad. And they got a selection: a reformist, a moderate, Hassan Rouhani. What I want to do on this edition of The Cross in the Desert is talk to you briefly about this election, and I want to also read two very special letters about the mood of the people prior to the election, and just discuss the ramifications of Iran's new president, the successor to Ahmadinejad, and ask the question: is there real hope for my friends in Iran? Will there be reform and change? Or will it be the same under a different name and a different president? Will it be much more human rights violations, much more executions, much more arrests and political prisoners? We will wait and see. But what I want to do right now is read the BBC's account of this election this past Friday. The reformist-backed cleric Hassan Rouhani won just over 50% of the vote and avoided the need for a runoff. Mr. Rouhani said his win was, quote, a victory of moderation over extremism. The U.S. expressed concern at a lack of transparency and censorship, but praised the Iranian people and said it was ready to work with Tehran. Some 72.2% of the 50 million eligible voters cast ballots on Friday to choose the successor to Ahmadinejad. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei congratulated Mr. Rouhani on his victory, saying, "I urge everyone to help the president-elect and his colleagues in the government, as he is the president of the whole nation." Ayatollah Khamenei will ratify the vote on the 3rd of August, and the new president will then take the oath in Parliament. There were scenes of celebration in the capital as thousands of people, many sporting Mr. Rouhani's election color of purple, they took to the streets of Tehran. Security officials stood by but did not intervene as crowds chanted, "Long live Rouhani." One student, Sahar, told AFP news agency, quote, "I see happiness in this city after 8 years. I see it on the faces of my people." Another in the crowd, Ashkan, said, "Tonight we rejoice as there is once more hope in Iran." One voter, Mina, told Reuters news agency, "I haven't been this happy in 4 years. They finally respected our vote. This is a victory for reforms and all of us as reformists." After the last presidential election in June 29, millions of Iranians took to the street to demand a rerun when the supreme leader dismissed claims by the 3 defeated candidates of widespread fraud. On Saturdays, some chants were heard calling for the release of political prisoners, which is, by the way, a policy Mr. Rouhani appears to support. After his victory, Mr. Rouhani issued a statement saying that, quote, "a new opportunity has been created for those who truly respect democracy, interaction, and free dialogue." The 64-year-old cleric said, "I thank God that once again rationality and moderation has shone on Iran. This victory is a victory for wisdom, moderation, and maturity over extremism." Now, I just want to take some time to make some observations here. Many of my Iranian friends did not vote, and they're very skeptical. And those that did vote expressed a key word in all of this: hope. Hope for reform and hope for change. They have endured and suffered much depression and anxiety in the last 4 years under Ahmadinejad. The relentless pursuit of journalists, bloggers, human rights lawyers being arrested and thrown into prison for disagreeing and speaking out about the government. For the first time in 4 years, they have real hope looking forward to this new president. But there are those Iranians who live abroad, residing in Canada, who remain extremely skeptical and outright vigilant about this present regime, that nothing good can come out of this regime, that there can be no hope for change. And this is a status on Facebook by a lady named Shabnan Kalapuki. I think I'm pronouncing her last name correctly. And she says this as a resident of Ontario, once living in Iran. She said about the election, it proved once again that Iranians are not ready yet to taste from the fountain of freedom and democracy. I feel sorry for this conned nation that they cheer over a pathetic criminal. They tend to forget their history and let it repeat itself. It sure seems this nation prefers to be mocked and oppressed repeatedly by these terrorist jihadists. Shame on those who practice or participated on this sham election of this criminal and illegal regime and accept their Islamic Sharia constitution and betrayed the blood of the martyrs, especially those who were killed 4 years ago by the same regime. Well, she, that is Shabnam, sees nothing good about this. She's seeing those Iranians who participated in the election as those that forget their history, those that have forgotten what happened 4 years ago, that these are criminal jihadists, that this regime is going to keep them in bondage, and there can be no change, and there can be nothing good to come out of this. Some of my Iranian friends said, all of these boasts that he's going to help solidify a better relationship with the West, and that he's going to see that political prisoners are set free. This all sounds fine and good, but they always say that to get a vote. And as I was chatting with my friend Miriam, I said, yes, typical politicians usually engage in a lot of promises and rhetorics, and once they're in office, they seem to forget those promises. So there's a mixed mood in Iran. While Mr. Rouhani is a moderate, he claims to be a reformist. He claims to want to set political prisoners free. He claims to want to see change. He wants to have more of an open dialogue with the West. That remains to be seen. And what I want to do now is take some time and to read two very important letters that reflected the mood of many Iranian people prior to this election. And this first letter comes from a man named Farhad. He was writing to Baham Nazari. Baham Nazari is the executive producer of the movie The Golden Veil. The Golden Veil is a movie you can see up on YouTube. It talks about the truth of the 1979 Islamic Revolution. And what I want to do is read this very brief letter from this young man and let you decide. He says, Dear Mr. Nazari, as you have often said, a picture is worth 1,000 words. But since I can't send you a picture, I send you these words, and you can paint a picture with these words of the present day Iran. Depression, suicide, hunger, unemployment, hyperinflation, corruption, rising crime, fear, executions, hopelessness. My young brothers sleep at night with hungry stomachs, hoping they don't wake up in the morning. This is why I will not be voting for this Islamic dictatorship. Listen to what Farhad has to say. What are the problems in Iran? And here's the question we ask. Is Mr. Rouhani going to make a difference, or will it be ultimately up to the Supreme Leader and the Revolutionary Guard and the Guardian Council who will say what happens? He says depression, suicide, hunger, unemployment, crime, fear, execution. Will this new president do anything about our human rights? Will he do anything about our freedom of speech? Will he really bring any kind of reform and democracy to Iran? I want to also share briefly this letter from my dear friend Adafi, who lives in Tehran. Adafi has been a source of inspiration for all of my blogs. She helped me write the very important book, The Rose of Nowruz, which I have sent out hundreds of files to my friends in Iran. Here's what she said just prior to this election. As we reach the date, I remember my memories 4 years ago at the same time. My friends and I were so enthusiastic and energetic about the upcoming election. We used to think that those dark and exhausting days of Ahmadinejad is going to come to an end. We were so happy. We used to think Musavi, that means freedom. Freedom means happiness. But as it went by and the result was revealed, everyone was shocked. We couldn't believe our eyes. How could that happen to us? Now when I think about those damn days, I don't even give a damn to participate in this election. I am sometimes afraid of this election. I am afraid because of my people. They can't bear the power that stands against him. They are so weak. I'm afraid because of the young people who were killed, whose mothers are still mourning every weekend by their graves. I'm afraid that more young people get killed and harassed. I really don't care anymore about the result because I came to this conclusion that being a president doesn't count here. An election is just nothing more than a democratic show. Mark Twain says, "In a land where there is no freedom, if an election could change something, they wouldn't hold an election." This is really true about Iran. I just want to pass this week quietly and calmly, without any blood and broken hearts. I really wish that God help us to pass this stressful time more easily. Well, Atefi, I believe God did answer your prayer in part, and there was no bloodshed, and there was no death, and any demonstrations. It passed relatively calm. And although I'm very thankful for this, although I'm very thankful there was no more violence and bloodshed, what does this mean? Many Iranians who didn't vote for this election look on those that did vote as betrayers. One that don't understand this regime really will keep them in bondage. And those Iranians that did vote and believe in the claims of Mr. Rouhani for the first time in 4 years, they have real hope. Well, what I put on my Facebook page to help out my friends was a post about this election. And I told my friends on my Facebook page I would be praying for their new president because I truly believe that true freedom, true democracy comes from God, and that God can work in the hearts of elected leaders because He's the supreme God of the universe. Our hearts are in His hands, and He can turn them in any direction He chooses. There is a beautiful promise in the book of Psalms that I posted on my Facebook page, and that it is my prayer that my friends in Iran and those living abroad would read this and believe the promise of God for those living in Iran. In Psalm 72 verse 12, David says of our great God, "He will rescue the poor when they cry to Him. He will help the oppressed who have no one to defend them. He feels pity for the weak and the needy, and He will rescue them. He will redeem them from oppression and violence, for their lives are precious to Him." God promises to hear the cry of the needy. He will be the voice for them that are voiceless. He will rescue the oppressed. He will defend them. He will redeem them from oppression because their lives are precious to Him. I hope and pray there is real change in Iran. I hope and pray that God will display His mercy and His compassion through this promise to my friends in Iran. What I ask of you is to pray for real reform and change for my friends in Iran. But pray ultimately that they find the true peace and freedom in Jesus, who is the real hope and the real foundation that we need to build our lives on. I would ask you to visit my Facebook page, Randy L. Noble. You will see many, many postings about the happenings in the political and religious issues of Iran. You can also contact me through email, rnoble1065@sbcglobal.net. I'm so glad that you joined me for this special election special on the happenings of the Iranian election. I hope to see you on the next Cross in the Desert. God bless you, and have an incredible week.